We live in an era where intelligence is measured by how quickly someone speaks, how confidently they argue, how loudly they parade their resume. But true intelligence, like true power, moves in silence. It isn't found in the clever remark or the viral opinion. It's revealed in the words a man chooses to say. Because every sentence is a doorway. It either opens into deeper understanding or closes with the click of ego. And the wisest among us guard that doorway like a fortress. They know that some phrases, though common, are silent assassins of growth, clarity, and self-mastery. Not. Tonight, we'll uncover 10 sentences an intelligent man never utters, not because he's incapable of them, but because he understands the hidden cost each one carries. From "I already know that" to "What will they think of me?" These phrases seem harmless, even honest, yet every time they slip past the tongue, they chain the mind to ignorance, insecurity, or inertia. So our task is simple. Expose the chains, break them, and replace them with Stoic resolve. Not theoretical resolve, practical, verifiable, lived. Remember, this is not a lesson in rhetoric, it's a recalibration of focus. A Stoic doesn't speak to impress or defend, he speaks to serve the truth. And when no words can serve the truth, he keeps the strength of silence. That's the discipline we cultivate here. Take a breath. Set the ego aside. Open the inner ledger where every word counts as a debit or a credit to your character. By the end of this journey, you'll know exactly which phrases to cast out and, more importantly, what disciplined mindset must replace them. 1. I already know that. This simple phrase might seem like confidence, but under the surface it often masks a deep insecurity, the fear of appearing unaware, unprepared, or imperfect. The truth is, no truly intelligent man ever needs to remind the world that he already knows, because real intelligence is never threatened by learning. It welcomes it. Think about it. Every time you say, "I already know that," you're closing a door. You're shutting off the possibility of new insight, of hearing the same idea from a different angle, of discovering something subtle you missed before. That phrase, though often tossed out casually, is a defensive wall, a way of protecting ego, not expanding mind. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus, the freed slave turned philosopher, once said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." That statement holds a quiet brilliance. If you believe you already possess the truth, you won't reach for more. And without reaching, you stop growing. This is why wise men listen more than they speak. Not because they lack knowledge, but because they understand its limits. They know the world is far more complex than any one person's understanding of it, so they stay open, curious, and receptive. Even when a lesson feels familiar, they treat it like a chance to refine their perception. In contrast, the person who constantly insists, "I know," is often the most stagnant in thought. That certainty becomes a cage, a refusal to explore further. And when the world shifts, when circumstances demand adaptation or deeper thought, they find themselves unprepared, clinging to what they thought was already sufficient. This doesn't mean you should pretend ignorance. It means you should hold your knowledge with humility, not arrogance. You can know something and still ask questions. You can be familiar with a concept and still invite new perspectives. That's what growth looks like. It's not a declaration, it's a discipline. Even in conversation, there's power in restraint. Instead of jumping in to declare what you know, let others speak. Observe. Listen for patterns. Watch how people think, not just what they say. That's how a Stoic mind trains itself. through silence, reflection, and the discipline to receive without reacting. Because at its core, the phrase, "I already know that," isn't just a barrier to learning. It's a missed opportunity for depth. Every moment holds the potential to teach, and if you can master the habit of staying curious. Even when your ego wants to take credit, you'll outgrow those who speak loudly and learn little. So the next time your mind whispers, "I know this," pause. Ask yourself, what if there's more? What if the real lesson hasn't even been revealed yet? Stay open, and you'll walk through doors others never notice. And that, quietly, is the edge intelligent men protect. 2. That's just how I am. At first glance, this phrase sounds like honesty. It sounds like a person accepting themselves, standing firm in their identity. But underneath, it's a quiet surrender, a refusal to evolve, a defense mechanism disguised as self-awareness. Because when someone says, "That's just how I am," what they're really saying is, "I've stopped trying." Intelligent men, truly self-aware men, understand that personality is not a prison, it's a pattern, and all patterns can be changed with enough awareness and effort. The Stoics never believed we were fixed creatures, doomed to live out a script written by genetics, upbringing, or the past. They believed in transformation, in becoming. Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, said, "Man conquers the world by conquering himself." That's the entire heart of this philosophy. Self-mastery over self-justification. Progress over passivity. To say, "That's just how I am," is to stop the conversation before it begins. It's to say, "Don't expect growth from me. Don't expect change. This is it." But if you want to lead, to grow, to matter, that mindset is lethal. Because it means your mistakes are permanent. Your temper is permanent. Your fear, your procrastination, your lack of discipline, all declared unchangeable by the very person living through them. The Stoic man doesn't make excuses. He makes changes, even small ones, especially small ones, because he knows that identity isn't something he has to defend. It's something he's free to redesign, daily, hourly, in the quiet choices no one sees. This doesn't mean you reject your history. It means you refuse to be defined by it. You can acknowledge your struggles without submitting to them. You can say, "Yes, I've always reacted this way, but I no longer want to." That's a more honest sentence, one rooted not in defense, but in discipline. When you say, "That's just how I am," ask yourself, is that the man you want to be 5 years from now, 10 years? Would the strongest version of you say that? Or would he look at his flaws like a craftsman looks at a block of stone, something rough, imperfect, but full of possibility? You don't owe the world an apology for your imperfections, but you owe yourself the effort to outgrow them, and sometimes that effort begins by rejecting the comfort of self-description, by refusing to build a personality around wounds you never chose, by realizing that being yourself is not a destination. It's a question you have to answer again and again, with action. So when that phrase rises to your lips, when you feel the need to justify your behavior by blaming your nature, pause. Ask instead, who do I want to become? And what would that man do right now? Because "that's just how I am" is easy, but becoming who you were meant to be, that takes strength, Stoic strength, the kind that changes not just how you behave, but how you see the world. 3. I don't care. These 3 words often masquerade as strength, but more often than not, they reveal the opposite. When a man says, "I don't care," what he's usually saying is, "I'm afraid to admit that I do." It's a shield, a brittle one, crafted not from indifference, but from disappointment, fear of rejection, or exhaustion from being misunderstood. But here's the paradox. True intelligence doesn't need to deny feeling. It simply refuses to be ruled by it. An intelligent man never wastes his energy declaring detachment. He doesn't need to convince the world that he's unaffected, because he has trained himself to remain centered regardless of the storm. There's a subtle but powerful difference between not caring and not reacting. The former is emotional suppression, the latter is emotional mastery. The first is a defense mechanism, the second is Stoicism in practice. Stoicism teaches us that emotional restraint is not about denying reality. It's about choosing what deserves your internal peace. Saying, "I don't care about everything," is intellectual laziness. It's an escape route for the overwhelmed. It signals that you've stopped filtering what truly matters from what only scratches the ego. But the Stoic doesn't run from emotion. He studies it. He listens to it like a teacher, not a tyrant, and then decides what action aligns with his highest principle. Because let's be honest, no one truly doesn't care. If you didn't care, you wouldn't need to say it. Indifference doesn't speak. Silence is its language. The moment you verbalize your lack of care, you're trying to convince yourself or someone else of a detachment you likely don't possess. And that's the trap. In trying to appear above it all, you reveal just how tangled you are in the need to be seen as above it all. A wiser man sees the bait and doesn't bite. He knows when a situation, a comment, or a person is trying to provoke a reaction, and instead of responding with coldness, he responds with clarity. He says, "This doesn't serve me," and walks on. No bitterness, no show of apathy, just action. This is the discipline of detachment, not numbness, but discernment. As the Stoics remind us, especially Epictetus, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. That includes what you say about it. Your words are reflections of your internal architecture. If you keep announcing detachment, maybe it's time to question whether you've actually achieved it, or if you're just performing it. In the modern world, where everyone is trying to care less as a form of emotional self-defense, the truly intelligent man stands out by doing the opposite. He cares deeply about truth, about virtue, about living well. But he doesn't let that care become chaos. He doesn't rush to announce what doesn't matter to him. Instead, he quietly commits to what does. So the next time you're tempted to say, "I don't care," pause. Ask yourself, am I avoiding pain or expressing strength? Am I reacting or responding? Am I truly indifferent or just tired of being hurt? Let your silence answer. Because when your peace is real, it doesn't need to be spoken. It's felt in your posture, in your decisions, and in your refusal to be provoked. And that is the wisdom of an intelligent man, not in saying he doesn't care, but in living as if nothing outside his control has the power to disturb the sanctuary within. 4. I'll try. It sounds harmless, humble even, but when you look closer, "I'll try" is often a disguise. It's a soft cushion placed under the possibility of failure, a verbal escape hatch. It gives the illusion of intention without the burden of commitment. And that's where the intelligent man draws the line. To say, "I'll try," is to leave the door half open and half closed. It avoids the weight of a real yes and the discipline of a real no. It's the language of hesitation, not action. The wise man understands that mastery doesn't come from half-hearted efforts. It comes from full alignment between thought, decision, and action. He doesn't try to become disciplined, he becomes it. Not because it's easy, but because he chooses to align with the challenge, not avoid it. The Stoic knows this truth intimately. He knows that every moment offers a decision. engage with life, or retreat into excuses. Epictetus was clear when he said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." No try, no in-between, just decision and action, because life doesn't reward intentions, it rewards execution. "I'll try" is tempting because it feels safer. If you fail, you can say you never fully committed. If you succeed, you look humble. But in truth, trying becomes a shield against self-responsibility. It creates a mental loophole, a way to preserve your ego even if you fall short. But the intelligent man doesn't seek shelter for his ego. He seeks structure for his soul. In the philosophy of Stoicism, there's no room for blurry action. The path is narrow, not vague. You either walk it or you don't. You either get up at dawn to write that chapter or you don't. You either say yes to self-discipline or you don't. The middle ground is the illusion that keeps people stuck. The ones who whisper, "I'll try," remain frozen while the world moves on without them. And let's be honest, when you tell someone you'll try, what are you really doing? You're transferring the burden of your future onto luck, mood, or circumstances. But the Stoic doesn't rely on any of that. He creates clarity where others create excuses. He understands that discipline is not a mood. It's a decision repeated until it becomes identity. This doesn't mean he never fails. On the contrary, he may fall 100 times, but he doesn't try again. He acts again. He recalibrates, recommits, and shows up with more precision. Failure becomes information, not a reason to hesitate. There's a reason why the language of commitment is so powerful. When you say, "I will," your mind begins to align. Your habits shift. Your actions follow your words. And when you say, "I'll try," that alignment weakens. It signals uncertainty, not just to others, but to yourself. So what's the alternative? Speak less, do more. Eliminate the word try from your vocabulary unless it means you are already in motion. Say, "I will." Say, "I am." Say nothing, even. Just begin. Action is the most honest language. It's the one Stoics spoke fluently, and it's the one that separates those who live deliberately from those who drift in a haze of vague intention. Because in the end, your life won't be measured by what you tried to do. It will be defined by what you committed to, even if imperfectly, and what you had the courage to finish. 5. It's not my fault. This phrase might be the most seductive trap for the modern mind. "It's not my fault" feels like relief, like you've taken a burden off your shoulders and placed it where it belongs, on others. But that relief is poison in disguise, because the moment you give away blame, you also give away power. And a man who gives away his power becomes a prisoner to the chaos around him. An intelligent man doesn't waste time pointing fingers, not because he's always guilty, but because he's always responsible. That's the Stoic distinction. Blame focuses on who caused the fire. Responsibility focuses on how to respond to the flames. You didn't choose the storm, but you do choose how you sail through it. And if you're waiting for others to apologize, change, or fix things, then you've made your freedom dependent on forces you cannot control. Epictetus said, "Don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they do happen, and you will go on well." This isn't passive resignation, it's power reclaimed. When you stop arguing with reality, you start influencing it. The wise man doesn't cry out at the unfairness of the world. He adapts. He builds strength not in spite of difficulty, but because of it. When a man says, "It's not my fault," he may be right, but what does that get him? Justification, sympathy. None of these will help him move forward. None will sharpen his character or build resilience, because life doesn't reward who's innocent, it rewards who's accountable. The Stoic man owns his reactions, his mindset, his behavior. Even when wronged, he looks inward before he looks outward, not because he enjoys blame, but because he refuses to surrender his control. There's a quiet strength in saying, "Maybe I didn't cause this, but I'll be the one to solve it." That's the language of leaders. That's the tone of men who don't hide behind circumstances, but rise above them. And isn't that what greatness really is? The ability to carry what others drop, to act even when it's not your job, your mess, or your fault. The world is full of men waiting for fairness, waiting for someone to acknowledge their pain, to explain the rules, to fix what went wrong. But the Stoic has no interest in waiting. He understands. Even if injustice found him, he will not allow it to define him. That's why you'll never hear him say, "It's not my fault," with bitterness in his voice. He might think it, but he won't live by it. Because to the wise, fault doesn't matter nearly as much as what you'll do next. Will you shrink from the moment? Or will you rise with calm intensity and say, "It ends with me"? That mindset transforms every setback into fuel. It turns chaos into clarity. And it reclaims the one thing no enemy, no failure, no past can take from you: your ability to choose your response. So, no, an intelligent man never hides behind excuses. He doesn't seek the comfort of innocence. He seeks the strength of agency. He knows fault may be outside you, but responsibility, that sacred Stoic fire, that always belongs to you. 6. It's too late. Few sentences slice away a man's potential more quickly than this one. It's too late sounds practical, mature, realistic, but beneath that thin veneer of realism lies resignation, a quiet agreement with failure before the true effort even begins. It is a verbal gravestone placed over dreams, ambitions, relationships, and even whole identities, declaring them dead while they are still breathing. And the intelligent man knows, as long as life remains in him, too late is a myth. Time is the easiest scapegoat, because no one can argue that the clock is always ticking. But watch how two minds interpret the same tick. One hears a death sentence, the other hears a drumbeat, a call to urgency, a reminder of how precious every remaining second is. Seneca, who wrote extensively on the shortness of life, didn't mourn the passing hours. He raged against wasting them. "You act like mortals in all that you fear," he wrote, "and like immortals in all that you desire. We postpone, delay, and defer, pretending tomorrow is guaranteed, yet recoil when tomorrow arrives, and we realize our window is smaller. Then, in ritual fashion, we declare, 'It's too late.' Thus, we absolve ourselves of the pain of beginning." The Stoic, by contrast, does not measure life by the moments that remain, but by the intention he pours into the moments at hand. Marcus Aurelius governed an empire beset by wars, plagues, and betrayals, yet he still carved space at dawn to journal, to train, to reflect. He did not say, "It's too late to become disciplined." He became disciplined. He did not say, "It's too late to build character." He built it in the trenches of absolute responsibility. Consider the psychological cost of declaring lateness. Each time you whisper those words, you reinforce a narrative of powerlessness, shrinking your future to the size of your past. You decide in advance that no meaningful chapter can be written beyond the current page, and so the pen stops. Not because the ink ran dry, but because the hand refused to move. Ancient philosophers would call this the ultimate self-inflicted wound, surrender through story. Yet every day history contradicts the myth of lateness. The painter Grandma Moses began her iconic career in her late 70s. Colonel Sanders franchised his first Kentucky Fried Chicken in his 60s. Stories like theirs are not outliers. They are evidence. Evidence that the only too late is the one we allow to survive unchallenged in the mind. But let us address the genuine fear hidden beneath "it's too late." Often, it is not time we dread. It is the mountain of effort we avoided for years, stacking itself into an intimidating peak. Starting now means facing that backlog of neglected work, physical, emotional, intellectual. Saying too late is easier than saying, "I'm terrified of the uphill." The Stoic response: begin where you stand. One brick, one page, one honest conversation. You do not need to rewind the years to reclaim your power. You need only to stop giving more power to the years ahead by refusing to act now. There is also the prideful layer. Admitting you waited this long forces you to face regret. The ego protects itself by saying the opportunity is gone, therefore inaction was inevitable. But if any chance remains, then the blame falls on choices, not on time. So we pronounce lateness like a verdict to preserve ego innocence. Yet wisdom demands we sacrifice pride, not potential. The intelligent man would rather start late than stay empty. Stoicism does not sugarcoat reality. Maybe you cannot recover every opportunity missed. Maybe certain doors have indeed closed. But the philosophy does not focus on doors. It focuses on agency. Which doors are still open? Which new doors can be built? You may not reclaim the reckless energy of youth, but you can channel the sharper wisdom of experience. And often, that wisdom shortens the distance to mastery because you no longer wander in distraction. Next time it's too late surfaces, pause. Ask, am I breathing? If the answer is yes, then time remains, not infinite, but enough. Enough to write one verse, mend one bond, learn one skill, shift one habit. Enough to prove that lateness is not measured by the sun, but by the surrender of the will. Remember, the graveyard is full of people who thought it was too late before it actually was. Don't be one of them. Live like Seneca urged. Recognize that while life may be short, wasting it is what makes it shorter. And if you begin this very hour, the clock becomes your ally, not your executioner. So, is it truly too late? Or is that just an old lie dressed in the convenience of time? The Stoic chooses to answer not with words, but with action, starting now. 7. I need everyone to understand me. The moment a man feels the need to explain himself to everyone is the moment he gives his power away. It sounds noble on the surface, wanting to be understood, hoping that others will see your heart, your intentions, your truth. But the reality is this: needing to be understood by everyone is a trap. It's a subtle prison where your sense of peace is chained to the unpredictable minds of others. And a truly intelligent man, a Stoic, knows that this hunger for universal approval is a slow erosion of the self. There's a quiet desperation in those words. I need everyone to understand me, because underneath it is a fear that if they don't understand, maybe you're wrong, maybe your values aren't valid, maybe your life isn't justified. That doubt can rot a man's spirit from the inside out. So he explains, and explains, and explains again, until one day he forgets who he was before he started performing for others' comprehension. Epictetus once said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." The Stoic understands that not everyone will see what you see. Not everyone will get why you walk the way you do, think the way you think, or feel the way you feel. And that's not a tragedy. It's a fact of life. The wise man makes peace with the discomfort of being misunderstood, because he knows truth doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it comes with silence, sometimes with judgment, and often with isolation. But here's the paradox. The more a man clings to being understood, the less authentic he becomes. He reshapes his words, trims his values, edits his truth to be palatable. He begins to live a version of himself that's acceptable, not accurate. And in doing so, he might gain acceptance, but lose the very core that made him worth understanding in the first place. There's something noble about silence. When a man stops trying to be understood and starts focusing on simply being, he radiates something rare. Conviction, not arrogance, not stubbornness, but a quiet, grounded certainty. And that certainty doesn't demand comprehension. It invites it, without begging for it. In a world where everyone is shouting to be seen and heard, the man who walks in peace, without needing others to validate his path, becomes magnetic. People may not understand him immediately, but they feel something in his presence, a stillness, a weight, a clarity that doesn't require translation. Consider how much energy is wasted in defense, how many hours are lost trying to prove your worth, your motives, your identity. What if that energy were redirected inward, toward mastery, not marketing, toward refinement, not reassurance? The Stoic doesn't broadcast his transformation. He lets the results speak. He understands that some people will misunderstand you, no matter how carefully you explain. Others will pretend not to understand you, because understanding you would require them to confront their own discomfort, and some will only understand once you've outgrown the need for them to. An intelligent man knows that understanding is a gift, not a right. You offer it to others, you hope it's returned, but you never beg for it. You don't water down your essence just to be digestible. You walk in alignment, knowing that those who are meant to walk with you will either catch up or fall away, and either outcome is peace. So if you ever feel the urge to explain yourself, pause, ask, am I doing this to build a bridge or to beg for approval? Is this clarity or is this insecurity in disguise? Because the wise man doesn't live to be understood. He lives to be true. And in doing so, he becomes the kind of man who is eventually understood by those who truly matter. Let the shallow misjudge you. Let the loud talk past you. Let the crowd fail to see you. As long as your conscience is clear, as long as your life is aligned with reason and virtue, you are already seen by the only judge that matters, yourself. 8. If only I had more time. It's one of the most seductive lies we tell ourselves. If only I had more time. It sounds innocent, even rational, but behind it often hides procrastination, fear, and a quiet refusal to take ownership of the present moment. The intelligent man, however, sees this phrase for what it truly is: an escape from responsibility disguised as a noble regret. Time is not something that waits to be given. It's something to be claimed. Life doesn't operate on pause. It doesn't hand out extra hours to the hesitant or second chances to the distracted. The Stoic understands that every moment wasted is a moment chosen to delay growth, delay action, delay the uncomfortable but necessary work of becoming. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." And those words cut deeper the more you realize how much energy is poured into excuses. I'll start when things calm down. I'll commit when I feel more ready. But here's the truth. Things rarely calm down, and readiness is a myth. You don't find time, you prioritize it. And if something truly matters, you make space for it, even if it costs you comfort, convenience, or temporary pleasure. Saying, "If only I had more time," is like holding the keys to your own house, but standing at the door, blaming the rain. The wise man doesn't complain about the storm. He opens the door and gets to work. He doesn't need the weather to be perfect. He just needs to start walking, because action isn't waiting on time. Time is waiting on you. How many dreams die not because they were impossible, but because they were postponed into oblivion? How many relationships decay not from betrayal, but from the slow erosion of later? How much knowledge goes unlearned because the mind was too busy with distractions disguised as duties? The Stoic doesn't seek the luxury of more time. He seeks the power of now. He knows the value of 5 focused minutes can outweigh 5 distracted hours. He doesn't just manage his schedule, he masters his attention. Because that's where life is shaped. Not in the hours you have, but in what you choose to do with them. Look around. The people doing what you dream of aren't living in some alternate timeline. They don't have 27 hours in a day. What they have is clarity. They've decided that what matters must come first. Not when it's convenient, not when it's easy, but when it's necessary. And when your future is necessary, you stop bargaining with time. You start honoring it. There's a kind of freedom that emerges when you drop this phrase from your vocabulary, when you stop pretending that time is the villain and start seeing your choices as the real driver of your life. Every time you say, "If only I had more time," ask instead, "Where did I let my focus leak today? What am I choosing over the life I say I want?" Because your life is not shaped by what you intend, it's shaped by what you consistently prioritize. So the next time your lips begin to form the phrase, pause, interrupt yourself. Say instead, "I have exactly the time I need, if I'm willing to use it wisely." That's the kind of thinking that shifts you from drifting to directing. That's what turns an ordinary day into a decisive one. And that's what separates the man who wishes for more time from the man who becomes more intentional with the time he already has. 9. That's unfair. Few phrases drain a man's power faster than these 2 words. That's unfair. They sound justified, honest, even moral, but at their core, they are often rooted in helplessness, in a desire for life to conform to our expectations rather than the reality of what is. An intelligent man doesn't waste his time arguing with the nature of the world. He studies it, adapts, and rises through it. Yes, life can be brutal. The good are not always rewarded. The cruel often succeed. Some people are born into privilege, while others are born into storms. But the Stoic doesn't live in denial of this. He doesn't demand that the world be fair. He demands that he himself be strong. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's not just a quote to memorize. It's a philosophy to embody. When you say, "That's unfair," what you're really doing is giving your power away. You're placing your emotional balance in the hands of circumstance. You're saying, "I can only be okay if life plays by my rules." But what happens when it doesn't? What happens when people betray you, when systems fail you, when outcomes don't match effort? Do you collapse, or do you recalibrate? The Stoic way is not to deny injustice, but to rise above it. Not to tolerate abuse, but to face it without becoming bitter. Not to seek fairness from others, but to create inner equilibrium so deep that even injustice cannot throw you off course. Because here's the truth most never realize. Life isn't supposed to be fair. It's supposed to be revealing. Every setback shows you who you are. Every loss reveals your resilience. Every betrayal is an invitation to build unshakable self-respect. The intelligent man reframes unfairness as training. He sees difficulty not as punishment, but preparation. When others complain, he sharpens. When others rage, he refocuses. He asks, "What can I control here?" and directs all his energy there. He doesn't spend time demanding justice from the world. He lives in a way that creates justice within. This mindset is powerful because it shifts your attention from reaction to creation. You stop whining about the cards you were dealt and start mastering the way you play them. You begin to understand that greatness is rarely born in comfort. It's forged in adversity. The man who says, "That's unfair," stays stuck. The man who says, "This is my chance to prove who I am," grows unstoppable. So ask yourself honestly, how often do you look at others and feel cheated? How often do you see someone rise faster, earn more, receive praise and think, "They don't deserve that"? What does that feeling do to you? Does it lift you, or does it secretly poison your focus? The Stoic doesn't compete with others. He competes with yesterday's version of himself. He doesn't demand fairness from fate. He demands discipline from himself. And that's why he wins. Not always in the eyes of the world, but in the realm that matters most, his inner world. Let the world be as it is. Let unfairness come. But meet it with a heart so centered, a mind so sharpened, and a spirit so grounded that nothing can shake you from your path. That's not passive acceptance. That's strategic detachment. That's emotional mastery. That's Stoic power. In the end, fairness is not what life gives you. It's what you give yourself through the way you choose to respond. 10. What will they think of me? If there's a single phrase that silently erodes the confidence of even the brightest minds, it's this one. What will they think of me? It sounds harmless, polite even, but underneath, it reveals a dangerous obsession. One that robs a man of clarity, courage, and authenticity. An intelligent man does not navigate life by the compass of public opinion. He charts his path according to truth, principle, and internal alignment. This question, what will they think, assumes that others are paying close attention, that they're analyzing your every move. But the truth? Most people are too consumed with their own anxieties to care about yours. And yet, many men live like they're on a stage, constantly rehearsing how they'll be perceived. They censor their beliefs, water down their ideas, hide their true selves, not because it's wise, but because they fear judgment. A Stoic man knows better. He recognizes that approval is unstable currency. One moment, you're praised. The next, you're questioned. The crowd is fickle. Their applause is conditional. Their judgment often reflects their own insecurities more than your reality. Marcus Aurelius said it best, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." The wise man breaks free from that prison. He doesn't ignore others out of arrogance. He simply refuses to live at the mercy of their fluctuating views. He understands that his character is a long game, not a popularity contest. He may be misunderstood today, but time has a way of revealing what shallow minds cannot immediately grasp. And here's the paradox. The more you focus on what others think, the less they respect you. People can sense when a man moves from fear. They feel when you're people-pleasing, when your words are engineered for applause rather than honesty. But when a man speaks with conviction, even those who disagree feel a strange kind of admiration. Why? Because truth resonates, even when it stings. What will they think of me is a trap disguised as self-awareness, but it leads nowhere. It delays decisions. It stifles creativity. It breeds anxiety. And worst of all, it disconnects you from yourself. Every time you silence your instincts to appease someone else, you betray your own voice. You become an echo, not a presence. A truly intelligent man reclaims his inner authority. He doesn't ask what they'll think. He asks, is this right? Is this necessary? Does this reflect who I am becoming? His standard is internal. His aim is alignment, not applause. He lets go of the need to be liked, and in doing so, becomes deeply respected, first by himself, then by others. Remember, your legacy will not be built on how many people approved of you, but on how many lives were changed because you chose to live in truth, even if your truth makes others uncomfortable. So when the thought creeps in, what will they think? Let it be a cue to pause, to return to your principles, to choose expression over suppression, to stand where you'd rather shrink. That moment is your training ground, because every time you choose truth over image, you become freer, stronger, wiser, and eventually you become the kind of man who no longer wonders what others will think, because you already know exactly who you are. What makes a man wise isn't how much he says, it's how deeply he understands the weight of his words, and, more importantly, what he chooses never to say at all. In a world where noise is mistaken for strength, silence is often the mark of real power. Every careless phrase, every self-justifying sentence, every "I already know" or "I don't care" is not just a slip of the tongue, it's a reflection of where a man stands in his inner life. The Stoics weren't just silent to appear disciplined, they were silent because they were focused, grounded. They didn't need to prove their intelligence to anyone. Their lives spoke louder than their mouths ever could. And that's what you must remember. People will measure you by your actions, not your declarations. So hold your words like a sword, sharpened, precise, and only drawn when needed. Speak less, and when you do, let every word rise from clarity, not insecurity. Let your quiet confidence unsettle the loud and impress the few who recognize truth when they hear it. Your silence will be misunderstood. Your restraint will be questioned. But in the long run, the man who governs his mouth governs his destiny, because what you say can build trust or destroy it. It can reveal your power or betray your weakness. So use it wisely, speak from purpose, and above all, never let the noise of the world drown out the wisdom of your soul. And if this episode spoke to something inside you, share it with someone who needs the reminder. Subscribe if you're on this path with us, and always remember, speak like a Stoic, but live even louder in truth.